So I more or less decided that the very next thing is to try and define a gradient editor tool. I'm back in my recursor source. I've made a color request volatile panel and color buttons. Now I am going to make a gradient window. I'm going to stick it in here. I don't want it to be part of the GUI yet. And I think it's a window base. I'm going to have to... It has been literally years since I have used my GUI to make a window, and one thing I know is that the file requester uses a window. Yeah, and extends window base. And it has to set up the window base with a title XY width height false and false. Somewhere around here I have window base. I should just look it up. Right, set up window base. Okay. Yeah, I'm just remembering, looking at this, that my windows don't have close buttons, and that's probably fine. There'll be other ways of closing the window by clicking apply or cancel. Just had to remind myself. I'm bad for this as well. I've never got into the swing, even though I know it's much wiser, of flags, sets of flags. I should just make it better and consolidate those flags, whatever it's called. But for the time being, I just need to know that to make a new window, I need to call set up window base, and I will stick it in here. Now, I'm just automatically thinking ahead a little bit and wondering, because the other options which get edited use simple volatile panels, I don't think too hard about how they're going to behave once they're opened. I know that they're going to either update the value or not. With this, it's sort of similar, but I kind of have to keep track of it, sort of, once it's opened, because once it's opened, clicking the button again shouldn't reopen it. And I don't like that sort of thing, because it usually means I'm just... Well, actually... Yeah, I mean, that is what it means. I guess I'll store a reference to the gradient window anyway, so it's just whether or not it'll be null. These, I only started this up to show that these are so simple to use, which is... I initially did want to use one of those for the gradient. Anyway. Right. Now, some things about the gradient window I might make the same or similar to the volatile panels, which is that they just open up and try and place themselves next to the mouse. You can, there is an option, there's an XY at the end of the new volatile panel. This is the color, new color request button. The color request new method. So you can pass an X and Y, but mainly you just pass these details, a name or a title, a parent for the gadget. Okay, this doesn't need a parent. It needs a title. It doesn't need an X, a Y, or a width and a height, really. I suppose I will, I will receive a width and height because I'll store the width and height that it previously was. I'm not going to make it have an OK func. I don't think. I think I'll make it you pass it a target or gradient set, and it applies it reads that target gradient set to display its contents, and then it applies the changes back to that gradient set. So I'm not going to bother with the X and Y. I will have a width and height, and I will receive a gradient set. I mean, I'm going to receive a gradient set. There's almost no point to that. I should probably put this inside my... I might find myself doing this. I don't know how common this is in other languages, but that work zone gadget is an example of a gadget which extends the GUI gadget, the gadget class of my own associated with the GUI. But it exists inside the definition of the recursor class, which is just the sort of class that contains the entire editor. And it's a nice thing to be able to do in a way, because I know that gadget's never going to be used anywhere else. It basically is a big part of the editor. But, so sticking it in there, I know it has access to the editor's info. You know, its own members, the editor's members. So this window might do well to be in there as well, this gadget, because it's... I did say before I might be able to reuse parts of it, and I probably could, but you know what's going to happen? Not yet. I will still pass in, and I will pass in some other things. Let's say, let's call it target. And this is a class I haven't yet defined, but it is gradient set. And width flow equals. I will use, actually, that's a thing I don't need to do in this case. Maybe I'll just make it 100, 100. That's the thing I sometimes do if I'm going to set defaults. Obviously, I can set the defaults in here. Sorry, I'm puzzling over exactly what else I might send, but for the time being, I will set up window base. I'm going to have to add some stuff before this, but it's going to be called find gradient set. And the stuff I'm going to have to do before it is going to be about figuring out where the mouse pointer is. I'm not even going to bother sending an X and Y to this. It'll always just appear fairly near the mouse pointer. And I do that by saying then I want to say X minus X minus equal width divided by 2. And then I'm sure that I've got some decided way of doing this. Where is it? Oh, yeah. I go through a load of palaver here. But then I just do this. Yeah. I'll just copy that. X limit X, comma 0. Okay, yeah. The value. And 0 and the face width minus width. Fine. Now, that has just centered it on the mouse and kept it within the screen. So if the mouse, it's centered on the mouse, is off to one side, it will not appear off the side of the screen. What else goes in here? X, Y, width and height. And the rest can be false, I think. I won't give it any extra. Although I wonder. I will need to make it resizable. I don't know why I put the resize flag last as well. It's really bad, all those flags, I know. Right. Now, I wonder if I can just build in the stuff to open and close it. In fact, I will. And for that, I will need a couple of buttons. Field, apply, button, cancel button. And I'll have to create them. Now the way I usually do this is a mess, but it's kind of good fun. The way I construct gadgets or sets of gadgets. A load of stuff is going to happen in here, and the bit that I'm about to write is actually going to belong at the end. But it'll be something like CX, and also up near the top there will be, this is just stuff I do all the time and it's probably not good, equals, now I believe it's like self face width, comma face height float, self face height. So I'm just getting the face and the height width of the newly created window, because the window base will set it up to have a certain border around the outside at the top and left and right and bottom, space at the top for the heading and to grab it and move it, space around the sides for resizing. All of that actually needs to change as well, but hey ho, it's not going to change for a while. For the time being, self face width will give me the inside size within the border of the window. I will need to know those things for determining the positions of all the gadgets. Another thing I'll determine is button width float equal button medium, and button height float will equal line height. These need slightly better names, but there's a bunch of constants defined with the GUI which are used in determining its appearance. Are they actually constants? They are constants. I mean, they can be changed to change the appearance of the GUI. The GUI is skinnable. Anyway, the standard GUI gadgets will be based on those constants. I should just make them globals and build a proper GUI editor. Anyway, these are shortcuts that I'm making to make this big bit of code that's about to come in here. Okay. Now, things will happen there. But down here, I will say cx equals. Another little thing I will determine is local bor float equals. Do I have something like that? Yeah. And I'll just make sure, I'm pretty sure border, yeah, 2 times size, and size is 1. So the idea of this is that you could just change this number and everything else is related to size, and most other things are related to the single line height thing. Yeah, really almost everything else related to line height. But for the time being, I know border is 2 pixels. So cx equals face width minus button width times 2 minus bar. Cy equals face height minus button height. Now, oops. Apply button equals new apply button, and its parent is self. Its name is apply. Its string is apple. That would be nicer. X is cx, y is cy, button width, button height, no image. Then I will call the align sides method, and with this I will do something like that, which should sorry, let's do this. That align sides should arrange the way the button is locked to the sides of its parent's gadget, so that when I resize it, it stays down at the bottom right. Cx equals plus equals button width plus border, not button height. And then cancel. Cx, cy, button width, button height, and again cancel button, align sides 1, 1, 1, 1. I will have to remind myself. These relate to left, right, top and bottom sides of the gadget. They're to be set to be either 0, 1 or 2 each. 0 would lock the relevant side to the lower side of the gadget relevant to it. One would lock it to the higher side of the gadget relevant to it, and two would make it remain proportional to either side of the gadget. And so as the gadget resizes, these will determine how the gadget moves around. Now for the time being, I will also do this, which is something like self set event response, or response true. And what that'll do is it'll say any gadget. What it really says is when I generate a response, call this method. But this true include children parameter means that also anything that's inside me, call this method. It's just because I did find myself assigning lots and lots of things, because I kind of do still group gadget responses into single methods often. It doesn't have to be that way, but space. I have found myself. I wonder if I need to do. My GUI needs reworked. I've got this thing called event, and so of course does I'm sure a monkey, and it causes interference. But now select origin. Where is this event coming from? Well, I kind of have to interpret this more. I'll say if kind equals event kind, what is it? Released on. That's kind of cryptic for what is actually the most common thing you respond to for a button. I've got released on and released off because in the days that I wrote my GUI, I thought for some reason it might be useful to know when you've pressed down a gadget and moved the mouse off it and released it, and it is kind of useful. But it means that most of the time I'm checking this released on class of event. Now case apply button and case cancel button. And in the case of cancel, I think I just say self remove. I think I'm going to try it because, well, there may be some cleaning up to do, which I discover afterwards. But then all the way up in a cursor, in among all my gadget pieces, corner zone, these are all buttons, out zone. I had this arranged slightly differently the very first time I coded it. Out zone is no longer used. Out label is no longer used. I think I should just get, or at least what I can do is this, and rem it out. If it turns out I am using it somewhere, then okay. So somewhere about here I must have out width, height, frames, loops, recursion, gradient button. Actually, I think I'll stick it down here at the bottom of this because it's a bit different. Global gradient window. Gradient window is not really a very good name for it. Probably gradient editor. What's the problem here? Gradient set, right. that will be what I will use. Let's see then. Right. Okay. Here's something I need to do when I close the gradient window, the gradient editor. I may as well change this to editor as well now. Excuse me, just sneezing there. Editor. Well, this is why I am going to put the editor inside. This is probably really bad practice, but just I'm going to do it anyway, because this is basically going to be owned by, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come inside Recursor, find work zone, close that class up. I hardly like using the function folding. It does obviously make things seem nicer, but also I kind of like seeing it. It reminds me. Sorry, I had to do that first. I like seeing it. It just reminds me if things are getting out of hand, it feels like. I don't believe that. I just got that totally wrong. Right. In here, I have yet another class inside a class. And this time, it is... Come on. Come on, come on. Gradient editor. Right. Because at least here I can say gradient editor equals null. Oh, come on now. It's just being dim. I am certain I could help my slow computer with this by doing what? By breaking up my source code into more sensible things. Now, set ink colors, right, so I have no response whatsoever for the gradient button. But inside response, this is the response of the recursor, the overall editor. Okay, menu selects, held. Yeah, so if something's held and it's the position slider, update the position. Event released on, here's me little beauty. And in here is gradient button. So this should be something like gradient editor equals new gradient editor. What's supposed to go in there again? Oh yeah, the gradient set. But actually, seeing as basically, because I'm doing it this way, oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, I am going to have to do it this way. Sorry, I'm going over in my mind again, like, how else could I nullify this from outside the recursor class? I actually need to do a check here. I need to say, well, partly because that's the point of this this reference, is to check to see if I need to open a gradient editor. It's amazing that that's the thing that's pushed me to put the gradient editor in here out of convenience. Like, another larger editor program for a different kind of thing, where the solution I have is quite different, but it's really, I mean, the problem's quite different. This is one specific item. I'm going to leave it like this. And I guess I'm going to make it that you pass in the gradient set. Grr. It's just that passing in the gradient set's redundant, when the gradient editor is a very much built-in part of the recursor. Can't really exist outside the recursor class. So as such, I'm not, the gradient editor is already referring to members of the recursor class, so I'm not going to pass in. Am I going to really regret that? I can always change it again later. I'll leave passing in the width and height. It's going to be much, much bigger than that. I'm going to make it more like 600 by 600. And then I can just call it blank. But also, I need to find gradient set. Take it away from just there. And what on earth? Oh yeah, gradient button. Huh. Sorry, I'm just looking at this. The gradient button will have to look different as well. There's my gradient class, and I'll have gradient set above it. And among all of, well, actually in the project, it's been a long time since I looked at project, but at the moment I'm storing a gradient, but that's not really what I want. I want a gradient set. And a gradient set will create a gradient, but by default it'll be just this one single gradient. Does gradient have read and write? It does, gosh. And yeah, I've got insert color before. I really have done not bad here for a single gradient. For a gradient set, I think I don't know if this should, I'm going to make it a linked list for now. It's going to end up gradients list because really this will be quite similar to many other things that I have in this program. The gradient set will be similar to the gradients in that it'll need this insert, these insert things, and that's similar to the corner set in that it has insert corner after before and corner has insert vert after before, all for linked lists because there can be a variable size and I just rattle through them in order when I'm processing them for various things. So gradient will be the same, or gradient set will be the same. Gradient's already the same, so I have gradient set and it'll be insert gradient after and before. I'll have to get really used to this. So, where am I at? 36 minutes already. Right, well, this is going to plod, but for the time being, I will have to see if just by 40 minutes I can make it open and close this thing. First off, gradient. I no longer can load and say I'm going to have to. What this is going to mean, every time I have to change this, and obviously it's going to change quite a bit just now, this is the file. Every time I change that I have to ditch my current setup, which isn't a problem, but it means I lose my palette, I think. No, no, it won't in this case. No, it won't. Right, and gradient set will need a read and write as well, even if it does nothing just now. Read and write, and it just comes with a file stream. fs file stream. Now, up here again. Where was that? In fact, that might almost be it. That really might. File stream's not found, is it? Oh God, it's not. You're right. Now, I actually do think that might be it. Because... so frustrating. Response. Because this is more or less... it if gradient editor equals null, gradient editor equals new gradient editor. Let's give it a go. But I'll do a couple of things. One is I'll turn on debug build. Another is I will get into main products and I will remove current. That's the save file of the... that's just like the save... great. Oh. Silly me. No member named gradient. Take me back there. Well, I'm doing something stupid here. I know what it is. What? Our function is read. Hang on a second. that's quite annoying. Well, not annoying. I'd forgotten that I'd done it this way. Wow. Okay. I have a feeling I'm doing overkill with this, but I'll just say if not fs return null. God, how did I do that? If not read line, if not fs read line equals gradient set return null. Ding 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 ding. If no, local new gradient set. Okay, and return new gradient set. Happy now? It can return a value, and it will. Now, okay, take me back to the other next problem. Okay, a gradient set equals gradient create. It doesn't actually equals gradient set create. Okay, okay. There's no create. I just need new, I guess. Oh, should I just stick a create in? Darn it. This is all like a sort of hangover from a confusion I had, or I've long had, about what I should really do with whatever constructors. And should they just be blank, really? And should I always use a create when I want something to go in a new instance of an object? Because so many objects I started to define needed loading and saving, and if I had anything inside a constructor, I'd end up confusing a loading process, having to clean up what had already been done to new objects. Anyway, so I might end up going back to a gradient set.create, particularly because I can stuff stuff in there, like make the top color white, the bottom color black, or whatever. But what is the what's the first thing I have to sort of define once I actually get this on the screen? Come on then, boyo. Define gradient set, apply, cancel. It can be shrunk down to nothing, and it can be disappeared again. When it's opened, it can't be opened again. I'll tell you something though. I didn't, because I defined a new gradient, a new class of gadget for the gradient button, because I planned to display a little simplified version of the gradient on it, and I forgot to update one aspect of the button that makes it actually change when you click it like that. These are also custom gadgets that I made for this project, but I remembered in those cases to update the particular state. Anyway, applying does nothing. So that, honestly, that's about 40 minutes, I guess. Okay, 45 minutes. Time flies. And It's not like an amazing start, but it's not bad. I have a window at least. I've decided that it's going to be a window where I'm going to put the code to run it. And I have a gradient set class which is created. And now, look, I'd forgotten that I had tweaked my GUI to make Windows do this at the sides of screens. Anyway, it's not very exciting. But I'm going to call it a day just now, and for the next time I'm going to put gadgets onto the face of this. And I think I'm going to make it as easy as I can on myself, because there's going to be quite a lot of gadgets. So I'm not going to try and be clever. But for the time being,